Hi everyone, this is Eileen from SingaporeOLevelMaths.com. In this video, I'm going to share with you this additional math question from one of the school mid-year paper. The concept involves completing of square, and as well as an explanation question on why the highest point of the curve is this particular coordinate. So the unique part is actually part 3. Because usually for this sort of question, especially in e-math, we are only given 1 mark to explain why the highest point is of this coordinate. So I'd like to share with you through this question, how do we complete square? This is a slightly more challenging one. And how do we do the explanation part, which a lot of students have problem with. So let us begin with the completing square. Now, completing square is a very procedure concept. And as I mentioned, this question is slightly on the challenging part for one reason. The coefficient of x squared is not 1. All right, so let me just highlight this. That is the first thing you need to check, because when we do completing square, we want the coefficient of x squared to be 1. But it is not the case for this question. So we have to make it 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to factorize out 3. So put my bracket in. I'll leave the constant -1 at the back untouched. So that leaves me with x squared minus 4x. Now you need to understand something. These are the 2 terms that we will be focusing on. And how do we complete the square? It's actually fairly easy. -3, just copy it down. Put in a big bracket. Okay, a big square bracket. Remember your -1 at the back here? All right, so now to do completing square is like doing the opposite of expansion. So right now we are doing the reverse. So this first term will be x, the sign here negative, follow. Now this next term here will be a constant, but how do we get this constant? Now you got to do what I call reverse engineer. When we expand, we get 4. So before we do expansion, you have to divide the coefficient of x by 2. So this is what we get, 2. Okay. And there's something else. When you do the expansion of this, you will end up with 3 terms. X squared minus 4x plus 4. But we don't want that 4 because remember how many terms we start off with? We only focus on 2 terms. There is no constant involved. So we need to get rid of the constant term. And what is that constant term? It's actually 4. And where does 4 come from? It's actually 2 squared. So you want to minus away 2 square from here, the square of this term. All right, allow me to actually just write at the side the expansion formula that I'm talking about. When we have things like that, let's say x minus 2 whole thing square. When you expand, it's x squared minus 4x plus 4, isn't it? And why is that so? Because we are using this formula, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. All right, so you notice that the term over here, there's a multiply by 2. But when I do the reverse from here to here, I need to divide by 2. And on top of that, I need to get rid of the constant that comes with the expansion. With the understanding of this part, what do we do next is right now, let us open up this big bracket. So carefully, so this is the first term, -3, x minus 2, whole thing square. Carefully, -3 multiplied to this -4, that will give me a positive 12 minus 1. So this will give me -3. X minus 2, whole thing square, plus 11. And This is the form that they want. So I'll give them the value of A by comparing is -3. The value of H is 2. And the value of K is 11. This is 2 marks. Now, we're going to take a look at part 2 of this question. Hence, explain why the highest point of the curve is this 2, -11. Now, if you look at this quadratic graph here, if I were to ask you for a quick sketch, remember the most important first question that you should ask yourself before you sketch is, what is the shape of this quadratic graph? Happy or sad? Take a look at the coefficient of x squared is -3. So it's a sad face. Okay, so sad face. Maybe I just ignore the axis. Let's just draw a sad face. And then we know that sad face graph has max value. So the question wants us to explain this, and I want you to pay attention to the marks allocation. 3 marks. Okay, it's 3 marks. So how do we go about explaining? Now we need to take a look at the completed square form, this form here. All right, and then we need to break it up to explain. So first of all, something very unique in here is actually the square term. So what can we say about the square term? It's actually property of all square term. We know that square term is definitely more than or equals to 0. Now, how about -3 x minus 2 whole thing squared? If you know that your square term is going to be more than or equals to 0, you know that this with this -3 coming into the picture, it's going to be a negative term. Okay, so it's less than equals to 0. However, I have another term that's tagging along, which is your +11. So since you know that this term here is going to be less than or equals to 0, if I add an 11, what can you tell me? It's going to be less than equals to 11. Now, can you see that what we have done is we have actually break down the completed square form by looking into each individual term, starting off with the square term, and then the constant that is tagging along with the square term in order to draw the conclusion that it's going to be a negative value or a 0 value. And then before we add in the constant +11, to conclude that, oh, look, this graph is going to be less than or equals to 11. And that is how we know that, look, that is the maximum value of the quadratic graph, which is 11. So therefore, we conclude that, okay, the maximum value of y is 11. Maximum y is 11. And when that happens, what will be the value of your x? Okay, so simply you set your square term, which is this term, to be equals to 0. So x minus 2 will simply be equals to 0. X is equals to 2. All right, so that is the value of x when y is at the maximum. So therefore, highest point on curve. So basically, you need to actually conclude the question. Okay. Is 2, 11. So this is how we actually present and explain for a 3 marks question. What if it's just 1 mark? If it's just 1 mark, you just need to they will usually just ask you to state the coordinate of the maximum point, state the coordinates of the turning point, and you can just directly get it from your completed square form without the explanation over here. Now, I hope I have shared with you how you go about explaining such a question, okay, that involve completing square And basically, it comes back to your quadratic graph. Thank you, and I see you in the next video.